Good evening, everybody. I'm Teresa Strong. I'm a co-founder of the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research. And maybe more importantly, I'm mom to an amazing young man with PWS, my son Daniel. So Daniel is 24, and I've been on this journey for quite a few years now. And I've learned a few things along the way. The first thing is that PWS is really hard. You know, there's something that's not quite right to have to tell your child when they come to you and say, hey, I'm hungry, to tell them, oh, well, you've already had your snack, and your meal's not for 2 hours, and you're not going to get any food before then. And that's what we have to tell our kids all the time. And we do it because that's what keeps them healthy. But it kind of chips away at your soul a little bit as a mom and dad to have to tell that to your kids. And it's not until you have a child with PWS that you realize how many activities, galas and parties and holidays really center around food. And that's really stressful for our kids. So PWS can be a real challenge, but I've also learned that PWS brings many gifts. And one of the big gifts is really present right in this room. As parents of kids with PWS, we learn just how much our family and friends support us. So, I mean, you can see in this room, everyone here has a connection to Mary and Ian and Carson, and we all want Carson to have the best possible life he can. And parents don't often get to really appreciate that. And the other thing that we see that get revealed to us all the time are heroes. There are so many heroes that are in our lives. And one exciting thing we get to do tonight is celebrate one of those heroes. So Ed Royce is a congressman who has had a long, distinguished career, and he has done many important things in foreign affairs and taking care of his constituents. But he has also been a hero to our community. So because of Ed and working with Amy, we now have a National PWS Awareness Month where we can go out and educate our communities about PWS. And because of Ed, we know more about how to advocate for our kids on Capitol Hill because he took the time to come and talk to parents about that. And he, with Amy Porter, have run a golf and tennis tournament for 10 years that has raised more than $1 million for PWS research. So 10 years ago, when they started that, there were 0 treatments on the horizon for PWS, 0 new treatments. We just came from a scientific meeting last week. There's 6 clinical trials open with 3 more getting ready to open, all for new treatments for PWS. And it really would not have been possible without the support of Ed and so many others. So I am really thrilled to be able to bring Ed up here.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you very much.
And give him this heavy award, our 2018 Champion of Hope Award.
Teresa Strong, thank you. Thank you very, very much. Let me say just a few words about Teresa Strong, because in terms of researchers, genetic researchers, many of you don't know, she volunteers her time. And as she has shared with you, when we started this process, I think maybe we could count on one hand the number of people doing research. Now, thank you, Teresa, for your work, your leadership. There are 200 researchers at work, and the results, you know, as we march forward with clinical trials, offer more and more promise. I was just going to say that I got involved, like many of the families here, through extended family, right? My chief of staff, Amy Porter, her niece, Abby Porter, was the first PWS child that I really spent some time with. But getting to know all of the families here, watching your engagement, your involvement on so many fronts, we raised $2 million with those golf tournaments, but we raised the kind of awareness that allowed us to go up on the Hill while you were here and to talk to senators and House members, and the appropriations that came forward really assisted in covering this research. I also wanted to thank President Bill Clinton for being here with you today. And let me just say, I had the opportunity to work with President Clinton on a number of issues, many bipartisan bills that were passed into law, and to travel to Africa, to travel to South Asia, and work in a bipartisan way on legislation, not just to improve conditions here in the United States for people here, but to reach out across the world from Africa to Asia and to give people hope in terms of U.S. engagement around this globe. And the fact that he would be here tonight, and I know that this is the all-time record, Mr. President, for the amount raised for Prader-Willi. Thank you for your efforts here tonight. $250,000. I'm going to exit the stage, and let me just thank again all the families for your continued participation here.
Hi. I think most of you know who we are. We're Mary and Ian Alberg. More importantly, we're Carson's parents. And our son Carson, has Prader-Willi syndrome. Thank you to our very good and loyal friends, President Clinton, Governor McAuliffe, and Dorothy McAuliffe for being here tonight. Thank you to Congressman Ed Royce for his tireless commitment to helping the Prader-Willi community. And a special thank you to Timothy Shriver for being here with us tonight and being a champion of all people with disabilities. And thank you very much to our parents who are here with us tonight, who have never left our side on this journey. The day we received Carson's diagnosis was the darkest, scariest, and saddest day of our life. But to be honest, we don't remember much of the details, just the words, Prader-Willi. Later on that same day, we met a doctor at Children's Hospital who happened to have a son with Prader-Willi. She asked her son what she should say to us, and he said, simply say, congratulations. We carried that word close to our hearts every day as we went to the NICU to visit Carson, and in those first few months of Carson's life. Those days were very tough, but we were thankful to many in this room for the support and love that you all shared as we learned what our new normal would become. Today, we're in a different place. We're so proud of the little boy that Carson has grown to be, and we cannot imagine our life without him. Now our focus is our concern on helping Carson strive. We want to thank all of you for being here to support the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research. By working together, we work towards the day that children with Prader-Willi can live independent lives. To date, the Foundation has committed more than $6 million to support PWS-related research. In the 3 years since Carson was born, the number of PWS-related clinical trials has quadrupled, and there are much more in the pipeline. This is where your money is going. Here with us tonight are several parents with children that face other special needs. We welcome them here. We all have this special bond that many cannot begin to understand. Each of our children has their own set of challenges, but as their parents, we are all the same. We work every day fighting to help our kids live the brightest, happiest, safest, inclusive, and fulfilling lives that they can. This really wise woman we know once said, "It takes a village to raise a child." And oh, was she right. And for our children with special needs, our villages are extensive. We want to thank all the therapists, doctors, pharmacists, teachers, aides, grandparents, nannies, babysitters, cousins, aunts, and uncles, all who go the extra mile every day to help our children. By joining us tonight, you all are now part of our village, helping turn ours and our children's hopes into reality, and we cannot thank you enough. Before Carson was ever born, my favorite quote was, With a skillful hand and a willing heart, the difficult we do at once. The impossible just takes a bit longer. This quote now defines our lives, Carson's life, and the lives of many in this room. Carson has taught us to have patience and to have hope, that by working hard, you will eventually achieve your goal. It might not be perfect, but when many thought it was impossible, you'll find a way to get it done. I want to give a special thank you to the executive committee, which is made up of 3 other Prader-Willi families, Dominique, Kristen, and Rachel. Thank you for all you did to make tonight a success. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here tonight to support all children that have Prader-Willi. We've raised tonight already close to $250,000. And I hope that you all don't leave without bidding either on the art or the auction or getting some wine. Okay, now it's time for the video. We've put together a video to show off our children, their strengths and their challenges. We hope you enjoy it, and it's okay if you cry. We've watched it 20 times, and I've cried every time. They're not always sad tears. Sometimes they are, but mostly they're tears of how proud we are of all the children. Here are some of the very sweet, friendly, loving, smiley, smart, funny kids with Prader-Willi syndrome. Now I'd like to introduce you to Megan Michi, my new friend. Megan's visiting us from Canada, so let's give her a nice, warm welcome. Okay.
Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Megan Michi. I am 29 years old and I have Prader-Willi syndrome. More importantly, I have competed in Special Olympics for 15 years. I have represented Canada in 2 World Games, the first in 2011 in Athens, Greece, and the second in 2015 in Los Angeles. I competed in swimming and was fortunate enough to win several gold, silver, and bronze medals. Throughout my career as a Special Olympics athlete, I will never forget winning my 4 gold medals in Athens. Special Olympics has been a difference maker in my life. My involvement in Special Olympics has helped me become more confident and enabled me to develop life skills that have been extremely important. I have forged new friendships and traveled the world through my participation in Special Olympics. It is truly a privilege to be able to introduce Mr. Timothy Shriver. You and your family have been pioneers in the Special Olympics movement. In your role as chair of Special Olympics, you continue to have a profound impact on everyone who gets involved in Special Olympics. You have demonstrated a tireless commitment to empowering people with intellectual disabilities. Please know that all Special Olympic athletes, including myself, and their families around the world are extremely grateful for your dedication to this incredibly valuable movement for people with intellectual disabilities. You, Mr. Shriver, are a difference maker, and it is truly an honor to be able to introduce you today. So here is the wonderful Mr. Timothy Shriver.
Can I have a hug?
Thank you.
Wow. I think you just, Megan, you pretty much just nailed it, I would say. Not because you spoke about me, but because of the way. That was nice too, but that's not the reason you nailed it. You nailed it because you reminded us why we're here. You reminded us, yeah, okay, can I keep going or should I stop? So, okay, so I'll keep going. So just so you know, we had a moment with President Clinton just a minute ago, and just before, Megan and I got to talk a little bit about her sports workouts and so on. I said, what sports are you doing now, Megan? She says, oh, I'm only doing swimming. I said, do you swim once a week? No, twice a week. I said, how far do you swim? Well, twice a week I swim between 3 and 4 kilometers at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know how many laps that is? I asked, because I mean, I know we're not metric in this country, like I'm going 3K, 4K, I'm thinking I know how far that is. That's 120 laps. What? I know, Mr. President, they're saying you get the credit for the biggest turnout in money in the history of this benefit, but I'm putting my money on you next time, young lady. I want to congratulate Congressman Royce, President Clinton, distinguished members. I think Governor McAuliffe is still here. The Albergs, you guys have juice. Can I just say that? I mean, you filled this room up with about half the cabinet from the president, or at least the donors, Hani Masri, some of that whole Clinton. What do we used to call you? Best friends of Bill, FOBs. You put a lot of them in the room, so congratulations. And it's nice to see them in the room, I might add. We are, in so many ways, we miss you. All right, but this is not a partisan, this is not a political event. And I want to thank all those moms and dads and many young people with Prader-Willi who've come up to me to say they've won medals in the Special Olympics. I want to thank Nicole Preston, who leads the Special Olympics movement here in the city of Washington, D.C., one of our great local leaders. I want to thank Krista White, who's on our team leading our international development work all over the developing world here, who's a grandma, and so many others. Because the president's here, I'll tell just one quick story. And I will say this with both honesty and enormous gratitude. No president in the history of the country, actually, has been more supportive of the work of the Special Olympics movement and of disability rights than President Clinton has been, and his wife, and Mrs. Clinton also. He's the only president in the history of we're 50 years old. In 50 years, only one president has attended the opening ceremonies of the Special Olympics World Summer Games. That was President Clinton in 1995. As it turns out, I'm sure he gave a great speech. I don't remember the whole thing, but I do remember one moment from that, and I shared it with him just a few weeks ago when we were together. Down on the field, we were at Yale Bowl, and the president had to stay at the top because the security wasn't that great in those days at Yale Bowl. It was kind of falling apart a little bit. But anyway, we have 6,000 athletes down on the field. The president starts to give his opening address from the top row of the stadium. And down on the field, all the athletes had been given cameras. In the old days, when people are looking at me like, what's a camera? You know, you remember? Right, okay. So they all have their cameras. One of the professional photographers sees a group of athletes. I think he thinks from an African nation, sees colorful outfits, goes over to tell them, sees them, about 12 of them, they all have their cameras to look at the top of the stadium to get a picture of the president, and he notices that all the cameras are backwards. So he realizes they've never used cameras before and they need help, so he goes over to help them and he says, you know, you're trying to get a picture of the president and the athlete. He says, you just have to turn the camera around and you push the button and you'll get a good picture of the president. And the athlete says to him, oh, thank you. He says, but if you look through the viewfinder backwards, it works like binoculars, and you can see the president perfectly clearly at the top of the stadium. I offer that story to you because I think many times, as we've heard, there's this sense of isolation, loneliness, challenge, pain. We see so many times the indifference of the world around us. It can lead us, if we don't pay close attention, to feeling like our children are a burden, that they are a challenge, that the world doesn't love them. That it is quite the opposite. It is quite the opposite. We live in a divisive time. We live in a tense time. We live in an uncertain time. And we're not here, I dare say, for Prader-Willi. We're here for America. We're here for the United States we believe in, the United States that believes that everybody has a gift. We're here for a country that believes that communities rally together to support all of our children. We believe in seeing beyond color and genetic disorders and all kinds of labels to see the best in one another. We are a country searching for its soul right now, I dare say. And we gather here tonight, yes, to do research, yes, to provide supports, yes, to provide treatments and care and all these kinds of things for people with a special challenge. But we're also here to affirm their gifts. And when Megan gets up here and talks about swimming 3 kilometers twice a week, I defy anybody in this room to find a better example of grit and perseverance and toughness than she is. There's no pity needed. And so while there are struggles and challenges, and while there is pain and there is isolation and there is injustice and it needs to be reversed, there also is in this room, I hope, a deep sense of pride and confidence that when you bring your children to an early child care center, when you bring your child to a school, when you bring your child to the workplace, when you bring a member of your family out into the community, you should be proud of what your children are achieving, just like every other parent. And I'm so tired. The most painful thing I hear from parents is that there's no place I can go to be proud of my children. And it's outrageous, and we ought to be better. And we are better here tonight, and we're better when we work together, and we're better when we affirm the gifts of every person. We are at a time when there is a deep, deep hunger in this country. And where you stand matters. Tonight, we are standing together in this room from a point of view, yes, of challenge, also of determination, of grit, of love, of inclusion. There are a million different abilities, and the world is only beginning to name and discover what they all are. Everyone in this room has an ability. That's why I like the word diffability. Sounds like you can't pronounce it right, but it just gets people to think maybe a second time. About the extraordinary diversity of the human family that we're only beginning to tap into as a culture, as a society, as a planet. We have no time to waste to continue that journey. You have no time to waste to continue to fund the research necessary to give justice and dignity to people with Prader-Willi, and the rest of us have no time to waste to build a world that welcomes and appreciates their gifts. Thank you very much.
Well, I now get to do something that I have literally seen hundreds of people do and never thought I would be doing myself. Introducing President Bill Clinton. It's actually pretty amazing to think that he's been a part of our lives, Mary and mine, for so long. He gave us both our first real jobs. He allowed us to travel the world. And in fact, it was thanks to both of us working in his administration that we met and got married. And he's been supportive of us ever since. He blessed us at our wedding. And when Carson was born, he called us and said everything was going to be okay. And he was right. As president, he made unprecedented investments in biomedical research, nearly doubling the funding for the National Institutes of Health. And he provided the funding necessary to finish the sequencing of the genome, which is something that, as folks who are in this field know, is so important and so necessary for helping folks in these situations. For the last 17 years, through the Clinton Foundation, he has continued to bring together the partners with the knowledge, the skills, and the resources to solve some of our toughest health challenges. We thank him for everything that he did and for everything he continues to do to push science forward. And now it is our great pleasure and our honor to introduce the 42nd President of the United States and our good friend, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you very much. I feel, as I did, I don't know, about 42 years ago, when I gave my first public address as an elected official. I was Attorney General of Arkansas, and I spoke at the Rotary Club installation banquet in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. 500 people were there. All but 4 were introduced. They went home mad. I got introduced rather late in the evening by our standards. A lot of people went to bed at 9 and got up at 4:30. And the guy that was introducing me was so nervous, he was trying to pay me a compliment. But here was the first sentence, and it's true tonight. You know, we could stop here and have had a very nice evening. And you know what he was trying to say? Well, it's going to get better, but it's not the way it came out. I say that because we could stop here and have had a very nice evening. The slideshow, Ian and Mary, Tim and Megan. I was thinking, I asked Megan before I came up here, I said, where do you live in Canada? She said, Ottawa. I said, in 1983, Hillary and I celebrated New Year's in Chateau Montebello, which is midway between Ottawa and Montreal. And she smiled, and I thought, I know I'm supposed to see you as an adversary, but I can't quite get there. We're proud of you. I watched Tim Shriver tonight, and I thought, for all of you who get discouraged 46 years ago, on the Saturday night before the presidential election, I was in a plane with his father and mother, and we were about to get the living daylights beat out of us. And Sergeant Shriver was keeping everybody up. And we had to fly from South Texas to Texarkana for a rally. And as a metaphor for how you must feel in your life day to day when you just think you've cleared one hurdle and then something else happens. A poor Mexican pilot who spoke not one word of English was lost over the airfield. And he didn't know how to get down. And believe it or not, no one in the Brownsville airport spoke Spanish. So there we were, already embarrassed, and Sergeant Shriver had to endure the indignity of a guy circling the airplane in a single-engine plane for an hour and a half before we could get off. And by the time we got to Texarkana, all but 150 people of the thousands that had gathered had gone home. He got off that plane, and he shook hands with those people, and he gave them a speech as if there were 100,000 people waiting breathless. And the election was up for grabs. Why do I say that? Because first I honor Tim and his remarkable family. His brother Anthony, his sister Maria, they're friends of mine. I had the honor of speaking at his father's memorial service. One of the greatest times I ever had since I left the White House was one night I had dinner with his brother Anthony and Sergeant Shriver in Miami, and he had on a seersucker coat and the wildest, craziest shoes made in Brazil that I've ever seen. Some people see in the darkest hours the potential of their fellow human beings. Some people manage to stay big in defeat as well as victory. This is a very important night for me personally because I came to think of Mary as one of my family when she was only 22, working in the inner office of the White House. And I couldn't believe it when she told me, with her bright smile under her blue eyes and blonde hair, that her family was from Bahia in Brazil. Because in my former life, I wanted to be a jazz musician, and a great American saxophone player named Stan Getz went to Brazil in the 60s and discovered the music of Bahia. And because when I went back as president, a woman I still think may be the greatest singer in the world today, named Virginia Rodriguez, sang for me, and she's from Salvador in Bahia. This disease, like many of other life's plagues, knows no boundaries. No boundaries of race or income or geography. And it is part of an under-addressed challenge Americans face, because 30 million of our fellow citizens have some kind of rare disease. I think in some ways this is as compelling as it comes. And I don't want to embarrass them, but one of my former agents, Joe Fountain and his wife Mary, are here. Their daughter has PWS. And I see parents loving their children, and there is nothing worse in life than seeing your child have a problem that you think you can't do anything about. So tonight you should feel good because you can do something about it. And I want to say one word of thanks to Ed Royce. I can brag on him now that he's not running for re-election. If I did it, you know, when he was running, he'd get a primary opponent and a write-in could beat him. But anyway, when Ed Royce was in charge of the Africa Subcommittee and I was president, and we went to Africa together. And he and I agreed that it would be better to grow the African economy even than to give aid to people who needed it. They wanted to support themselves. And it led to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, which has been passed with overwhelming bipartisan support and then has been renewed for several years with bipartisan support. I asked him, I said, are you going to stay in Washington? She said, yeah, I'm going to find other things that we can work on together. This country works best when we have our disagreements openly, transparently, and then say, okay, now what are we going to do? And this is an example of what we can do. I was telling the staff of the foundation here that I first became aware of the problem of rare disease in two very personal encounters close together when I was president. A woman that I confess, I dated in high school, and who was a magnificent athlete. She could ski on one ski and lean over and drag her hair in the water and come up. And her hair was just below her ears. And in her mid-40s, she couldn't walk across a room. She had a rare neurological condition. Then the only available treatment was massive steroids. She gained 95 pounds. One day I was home as president, and she called me. We kept in touch over the years, and she said, can I come see you? I said, yes. She said, I can walk on the treadmill now. I lost 60 pounds. I'm presentable. And she came to see me. She said, look, I've had a good life, but you got to do something about these rare diseases, because they only seem like they affect a few people. When you look at all of them, they affect a lot of us. Then the niece of Senator Mark Pryor and the granddaughter of Senator David Pryor from Arkansas, the nephew, got at 9 months of total normal life, he quit developing. The connection between his brain and the rest of his body was totally severed. His eyes saw and couldn't prompt anything. So I did what I could to get as much money as I could, as quick as I could, to finish the Human Genome Project. Because I knew that once we got there, once we had an imprint, that scientists would do things, we did everything we could to keep as much as possible in the public domain immediately. And it would give pharmaceutical companies, researchers, university departments, the tools to go after other things. But we still desperately need non-governmental groups like the foundation you supported tonight. They can do exponentially more because they have the developments that have spun out of the Genome Project. By the way, if you're an American, it's the best job, best investment we ever made. There's been almost $300 billion of private economic activity as a result of it. So when you give money, whatever you can afford to this, you're giving it because probably you know people like Ian and Mary, and both their remarkable children. And that's the best reason of all. But you're giving it with a reasonable prospect that you can improve the lives of their children and children yet to come. And with a not unreasonable view that someday complete recovery will be possible. The government should continue to invest more in biomedical research. There's a whole national organization now just for people with all the rare diseases, kind of an umbrella group. We should support them. But in the meanwhile, we should accept and thank God for the advances that have been made and say, if we give money to this foundation, there's a real chance that in our lifetime, more people will be able to do more. I'd be very surprised if 20 years ago, someone with PWS could have won all those gold medals Megan won. And I know how far 3 kilometers is. It's 1.8 miles. And 4 kilometers is 2.4 miles. And the healthiest I ever was in my life was after I tore my leg up and I had to swim before I could run again. And I swam a mile a day and I thought I was somebody. And here I am, brought low by the star PWS example. I say this because we're going to have an auction, and I want you to give more money. And I say this because there is no value that needs to be cherished more than the unlimited love of parents for their children and the unlimited responsibility to give the children the sense that they are loved and valued and their life is maximized and they are free to return the love. But it is well to remember the most important non-scientific finding, that is, if you're just Joe or Jane citizen, of the sequencing of the human genome. And that is that 100% of us are 99.5% the same genomically. Some think it's more. And that is in spite of the fact that everyone on Earth, not 100% descendant from sub-Saharan Africans, have between 2 and 3% of their genome from our Neanderthal ancestors. Because for 40,000 years, we and Neanderthals roamed Europe together. It turned out we liked each other better than we knew. And I always tell everybody, you know, Hillary with Oliver Takes a Village talk, and I told her this, I thought finally I found out something she didn't know. And she smiled, she said, I'm not surprised to know you're part Neanderthal. But she was astounded to learn that she was too. Now, I say that because we're happy tonight. And one of the reasons we're happy is we don't care what political party we belong to. We don't care what we're fighting about. Whatever happens, when you go home and go to bed tonight, you will know you made something good happen today. You affirmed our common humanity today. And we forget that at our peril. I saw all these young people tonight who, anybody a day younger than me is now young, but who came through the line, the photo line, and told me they went to Georgetown. And I said, I hope you loved it as much as I did. But I just celebrated my 50th reunion. And for the life of me, I don't know what happened. It seems like day before yesterday. It does not take long to live a life. It is foolish to waste it all just focusing on what you're against. If you scratch nearly any human being on the planet long enough, there's a person there somewhere. And you can see the people in the faces of these children. You know there's a person there. And you're trying to let it bloom. It is a noble and good and beautiful thing. I have no idea how the parents of these children mustered the courage to overcome their initial shock and grief. But I know that the person who said congratulations to them knew what she was talking about. So think about that. When you're happy tonight, when you go home, A, keep supporting this effort. B, keep supporting bipartisan efforts to dramatically increase biomedical research. And B, just ask yourself, if this makes me feel so good, why don't I find some way to have a little more of it? God bless you all. Thank you.